Isn't there somebody you forgot to ask? I'm an autistic girl who likes cows.
Trans activist, PhD student, and TikTok personality.
Yo, hello, you very needy boy. Okay, that's looking good. Gonna go ahead and ping. I know, Raymond, you're very, very needy. Woo, silly boy, silly boy. Matt Walsh made a segment coming after You're Milking Mommy. Let's get into it.
And today with something extremely bizarre. You might like to think that because it's so bizarre, it's also fringy and therefore irrelevant and a topic we can ignore. But if you've been paying attention all over the past few years in our culture, you know better. It is dangerous to ignore the things happening out on the fringes because before long, they won't be on the fringes anymore.
If it's harmful, then yeah, you would want to talk about it and look into it. But if it's something that's not harmful, then it really doesn't matter what's happening on the fringes.
We're going to discuss male breastfeeding. There has been a lot of conversation about the subject of male breastfeeding. Breastfeeding, we have to put in air quotes in this case.
First off, even cis men can actually breastfeed. There are cases both in the historical anthropological literature as well as the medical literature of cis men lactating. There are some mentions even in the Talmud, which is like the Jewish Bible, about a man lactating. Like a man who nursed his infant after his wife died. German explorer found a South American man who breastfed his child for 5 months. Brazilian missionaries discovered children that were nursed by fathers when their wives could not. 55-year-old Baltimore man even breastfed children of his mistress. 2002 case of a Sri Lankan man nursed 2 children after his wife died during childbirth. There have been a lot of historical examples of even cis men lactating. I actually found that there was this African tribe, the Aka, where men breastfeeding is actually a very common thing within their culture. They have a much more kind of gender equal society when it comes to like nurturing and caring for children. It's very common for men to breastfeed in this society. Cool. As long as it's not harmful, there's really no problem there. And we actually even have research on the breast milk produced by cis men. This was a case study about a 27-year-old man who was able to produce breast milk, and they found that the concentrations of lactose, proteins, and electrolytes in this dude's breast milk are within the range of colostrum milk obtained from normal lactating women. Seems to be fine. There have been cultures across the world that have been doing this for a very long time, and we have very old cases of this happening too.
A lot of discussion about this topic this week, thanks in large part to a trans activist, PhD student, and TikTok personality who claims that he can lactate and breastfeed his infant.
Yes, I can do that. I do have that capacity.
Actually, the child is not his, but we'll return to that in a moment. First, we must unfortunately introduce you.
He's got to go for the zinger that the child is not mine because I'm like being a step-parent, being a co-parent of the child. So I guess Matt Walsh genuinely believes that like step-parents or adoptive parents are not real parents, which is pretty cringe. I mean, if somebody literally fulfills all of the parental duties of a child and that child calls them their parent, it seems pretty obvious that, yeah, they're their parent.
You to this person who calls himself Naomi.
I can't believe this person calls themselves Naomi. I don't just call myself Naomi. That's literally my name. Wow, achievement. Trans women can indeed lactate. You would follow the Newman-Goldfarb protocol, a medical protocol designed to help women induce lactation if they were not like getting pregnant themselves. I'm gonna be a mother. That's in the works, in the process. And part of that process is that I am working to induce lactation to be able to breastfeed our youngest child. Yeah, actually mommy Naomi. I've actually already successfully induced lactation. Like, I can actually make milk now, which has been a very interesting and very cool experience. It's like very biologically affirming too, which is something that's like gatekept from trans women, like so difficult. Wow, she looks really happy. Like, I'm just happy for her. She looks like she's gonna be a great mom, and that, so wonderful. I love the joy in her eyes.
Naomi TikTok.
You know, she's a real family woman, looking after her kids like that. Like, you know, would Matt Walsh be enough of a family man to breastfeed his kids? Would Matt Walsh be enough of a family man to do the laundry for his kids? Because he's gone on the record saying that he wouldn't. Guess I'm just more of a family woman than him.
There's been gatekeeping. That's what stops men from breastfeeding is the gatekeeping.
I can certainly tell you about the death threats that I've received. I can certainly tell you about the people that have been trying to dox me in order to gatekeep me from breastfeeding. Yes, it is being gatekept.
Biology is gatekeeping.
No, not biology. Biologically, it's working quite great. The medicine is working as intended, and I am able to produce milk. I am not being biologically gatekept because my body is biologically capable of producing milk. Trans women's breasts through HRT develop in the same way that cis women's breasts do, and then with access to galactagogues to be able to actually produce milk, boom, there you go. You can do it.
Now, in case you missed it, he did start that video by saying cow achievement. Now, what does that mean exactly? I wasn't sure at first either, because adults who aren't mentally ill don't talk like that. But
okay, so what I mean by cow achievement is that I'm an autistic girl who likes cows. There's a bit of an ongoing joke within my community about like cow stuff. I might even say a moo woo if I'm feeling really, really spicy. I like cows, and so I have some cow plushies and I make cow jokes. Producing milk seemed like the perfect opportunity for another one of the classic Mommy Naomi cow jokes. That's it. That's as deep as it goes.
if you look around Naomi's social media feeds, you'll begin to get some sort of idea. And I'm sorry I have to show you this, but here is this one image there. And
damn, she's hot. Ooh.
the image says, "I'm an incredibly cuddly cow."
Yeah, I love cuddling. I am a very cuddly cow.
Notice the cow attire and all of that. Now, at this point, 2 and 2 are starting to
I gotta say, like, putting that pic on the screen is such an own, like, on my end, because, like, he's showing me being hot and attractive. There is no way that somebody can look at that picture and be like, oh, that looks so biologically male, man. Like, oh my gosh. Transphobes masturbate to this stuff. Like, we know that. There is statistically shown to be correlations between being transphobic and liking transgender porn. It has been known. I gotta say, there's definitely been a lot of Matt Walsh fans who see this and might be convinced to support trans rights a little bit more. I'll just put it that way.
cow attire and all of that. Now, at this point, 2 and 2 are starting to come together. Your little gray cells are connecting the dots, but you're resisting the obvious conclusion. You don't want to believe that this guy is really some kind of bovine fetishist.
No, I'm just an autistic girl who likes cows, and I like wearing my cow PJs, and I think I look cute in them. And I have posted pictures of me being cute in my cow PJs to like spicy websites because I think I'm cute and hot.
That's what he is. Those other social media posts that I won't put on the screen clearly show. He also apparently has an OnlyFans account.
Yeah, because I'm hot. Thank you for the free advertising, Matt. I'm sure that a lot of Matt Walsh fans are gonna go subscribe to my OnlyFans. We know conservatives love transgender porn way more than they want to admit. Did you know that in Brazil, a very transphobic society at large, that transgender is the #1 category in Pornhub Brazil? That's actually factual. Like, you can look that up.
So Naomi has a fetish for lactation and wants to pretend to breastfeed.
Hold up. Okay, how did we get from Naomi is a bovine fetishist to Naomi has a lactation fetish? That was not demonstrated. Also, I don't make like lactation content on my OnlyFans. So like how do we jump there? Does liking cows mean that I have a lactation fetish? I legitimately don't see the connection. Cis women who make lactation content, even if they do have a lactation fetish, and they were to breastfeed their kid, while they're also sex workers that make lactation content, is there something wrong with that? Like, is it wrong for a cis woman who makes lactation content to also like breastfeed her child? I don't see how that'd be wrong. But he hasn't even established that I have a lactation fetish. Like, he just jumped there.
Child, in order to satisfy this deranged desire, he just needed to find the child, to find the victim, and he did.
What? To find a victim? How? I don't even see this at all. Like, I'm trying to supplement the nutrition of my child. How does that make my child a victim? Like, we know that breast milk is better for babies than formula because of all of the profound nutrients and like microenzymes that we can't quite replicate in formula. Like, I'm doing this for the health of my child, and that's why I'm working with a doctor. Like, to call my child a victim of nourishment, it doesn't make sense at all.
As he proudly reported on Twitter, he's adopted his partner's children from a prior marriage. Of course, he claims that as a quote-unquote trans woman, he really is a mother, and therefore it's perfectly natural for him to breastfeed.
Yeah, so first off, I am a mother. That is the capacity that my kids understand me as. Like, my kids understand me as a woman, plain and simple. There was even like a case where my partner was referring to somebody else, and my daughter thought that like my partner was referring to me, and was like, "No, Mom, Numi's a girl." Like, that's how they understand me.
And many trans activists and even media outlets have endorsed this claim.
So also the claim about it being like natural for me to breastfeed. I didn't claim it was natural. I claimed that I was inducing lactation.
Here he is explaining the alleged scientific basis behind what he's doing. Listen.
I can actually make milk now. Regardless of if you're AMAB or AFAB, you are usually born with like mammary glands, breasts, milk ducts, all the things that you would need to be able to lactate. There is some like breast development associated with estrogen, progesterone, which further develops those milk ducts, but it's really just a hormonal process. You're trying to hormonally mimic birth and pregnancy, and this induces lactation. You'll take medicine which raises your prolactin levels, that's the hormone associated with milking, and you also do this process of raising your estrogen and progesterone really high, and then lowering it significantly, which simulates pregnancy levels of hormones followed by birth levels of hormones, and including the estrogen, progesterone, and prolactin. And if you start implementing a breast pumping regimen while you do that, you will start lactating. It's the exact same process that was used in a case report. They just implemented the Newman-Goldfarb protocol for a trans girl, and it worked. I can also now tell you in personal experience that it works. There's been like some research that has like analyzed the actual composition, male breast milk versus female breast milk, and it was identical. There is no way that Matt Walsh can even mention the last line of that video. He's going to have to ignore that, because that's going to completely defeat his entire argument. I guarantee you he is not going to address that point at all. But yeah, based clip explaining science.
Now, as you can see, he flashes a case report on the screen to explain that this is all medically sound. But to be clear, this is not...
First off, a single case report doesn't prove that something is entirely medically sound. What it proves is that this process exists and it can be done. That's why I cite other research too. There's a lot more research than just a single case report. This is something that's very replicable within the research. We have multiple case reports. We have this survey of healthcare professionals that covers at least 30 different trans women who are able to lactate. We have a lot of research on the actual development of breasts and pseudo-lactational tissue. And we also have other research on the actual contents of breast milk from induced lactation, including the contents of trans women's breast milk from induced lactation. There's a lot more than just a single case report, to be clear. I'm guessing all that Matt's going to do is attack the single case report to try to say that all research is bad.
Some authoritative longitudinal study. It's a case report that came out in...
Wait, he said it's not an authoritative longitudinal study? Does he know what longitudinal means? All that longitudinal means is that over a period of time, you assess the same sample again and again and again. That's what longitudinal means. This was a longitudinal case report. It was longitudinal. I don't think he even knows what longitudinal means. Typically, longitudinal studies will have like bigger sample sizes, but you can have a longitudinal case report. He legitimately just doesn't understand academic terminology.
2018, it's called Induced Lactation in a Transgender Woman. So you heard that right. Induced lactation in a transgender woman, as in one person. This is the smallest sample size you can possibly have in a...
Yes, that is advertised in the words case report. That's the point of a case report.
Medical paper. But let's read on. Here's the conclusion of the case study, which came from Mount Sinai. Quote, after implementing a regimen of domperidone, estradiol, progesterone, and breast pumping, a transgender woman was able to achieve sufficient breast milk volume to be the sole source of nourishment for her child for 6 weeks.
Based.
That's the big headline that you'll see paraded all over social media right now. Men can produce breast milk. The problem is that the case study is garbage. It even contradicts itself. A few years ago, when the study came out...
Oh no, let's hear it.
A doctor named Isadora Sanger explained that there are many flaws in this paper, and there's too many to list them all here, but we'll focus on a couple of the big ones.
By the way, this tactic of saying there are flaws in this paper, you can do that to literally any study ever. Even the most robust peer-reviewed study is going to have limitations. That's how science works. That's how research works. It's impossible to do a perfect study in the real world. That's okay. It's okay that studies have limitations. The whole point of this is that instead of saying, well, this study has limitations, therefore we can't learn anything from it, the point is to assess the research holistically. As in, you want to look at the entire body of peer-reviewed literature and see, okay, well, this study might have this limitation. Oh, but here's another study that didn't have that limitation, and it found the exact same result. So it seems that limitation isn't what, really determines the outcome here. Okay, so that limitation, doesn't seem to really be a problem for finding out this information. And when you do this study after study after study, and the trend in the research is abundantly clear, yeah, it starts to make sense. All available research we have on lactation in trans women shows that it is possible, safe, and healthy, and just as nutritious as cis women's breast milk. Like, there is not any research which demonstrates that it's dangerous or harmful or not a good idea. He's never going to present any research against this because it doesn't exist. So all he's going to do is cherry pick the easiest to attack study and then claim that all research is bad because this one study has limitations.
This is actually important because nearly every time, not nearly, I'll say every time trans activists cite studies to back up any of their delusional claims, the studies will always end up being hopelessly flawed and riddled with bias and wishful thinking.
Yeah, so you can make this claim about literally any study ever produced ever. Every study has limitations. And so he's going to use that to try to disparage all of research. But that's the whole point of why you need to look at research holistically.
This case study is itself a good case study for pro-trans case studies. First, the study reports two completely different testosterone levels for the supposedly breastfeeding transgender. In a chart, the transgender's testosterone level is recorded as 20 nanograms per deciliter. In the text of the article, it's recorded at over 250 nanograms per deciliter. Why does that matter? Well,
copying over numbers, there are prone to errors being made. You can issue corrections in articles if you find something like this and report it to the team. But based off of the study, it's pretty easy to recognize that the number in the chart, the 20 nanograms, is the correct number because the patient was on spironolactone. So she was taking spironolactone, which is very, very powerful at neutering testosterone levels super low. So on a dose of, let's see, that's spironolactone 50 milligrams twice a day. Yeah, there's no way that she would have a testosterone level this high. So it's pretty easy to figure out what the actual number is just by thinking about it a little bit critically.
As Dr. Sanger reported, quote, "This is problematic not only because it constitutes a glaring inconsistency within the report, but also because the higher result indicates that the patient had male testosterone levels."
Yeah, and that's the one that's clearly not true.
Therefore, Sanger concludes, quote, "There is no reliable evidence that adequate androgen blockage was achieved, even though authors claim that androgen blockage was an important part of the regimen."
Yeah, she had been blocking her androgens for years. It seems to be the case that with the medicine she's on, the lower number is the only number that makes sense. So we can reason it out pretty well. And I'm curious as to, like, if this person actually values science, why they would not just, like, submit a correction to the journal that published this.
It's well established that...
Actually, was there a correction issued? I think you can usually find corrections issued. Okay, I don't know if we're going to find it right there, but I mean, if they didn't submit like a correction, then it seems that they're not doing their due diligence to produce the best science possible, which that's pretty cringe.
Breastfeeding with high testosterone levels can cause all kinds of complications in children, including precocious puberty. But here, the authors at Mount Sinai apparently had no problem allowing it, which raises a red flag.
No, because it's very clear that the correct number was the low testosterone number. And if there was a dangerous level of testosterone in the breast milk, then you would have observed adverse effects on the child's development, which the case report explicitly mentioned there were no adverse events in the child's development, and the child had perfectly normal and developmentally appropriate health and development. So, no, that didn't happen. Like, he's just making up a story that didn't happen here.
That we'll get back to later. The second big problem with the case study is that the authors say the patient received a drug called domperidone to induce lactation. This is a drug that's approved for use to treat reflux, not to induce lactation.
So we're going to have to talk about off-label drug use. So what Matt Walsh is saying is that domperidone is an off-label drug use for inducing lactation. Fun fact, much of prescription medicine in general, and even over-the-counter medicine, is off-label drug use. There's this awesome peer-reviewed study right here, 10 common questions and their answers about off-label drug use, that covers all of this stuff. Essentially, like, there have been a couple studies that have assessed how common off-label drug use is, and it seems to be the case that 80% almost of patients in general are taking a drug for an off-label use. Essentially, the way that a drug becomes labeled is the FDA is going to approve a drug for one particular purpose. So in the case of domperidone, it was approved as a nausea med. Researchers later found is that this nausea med has a side effect of raising prolactin levels, and it can be used to induce lactation. Based off of this, there was research and medical guidelines established, like the Newman-Goldfeld protocol, to be able to induce lactation using this medicine as an off-label use. Actually, studies have shown that 25 to 50% of all prescriptions are off-label drug use, because most medicine has multiple effects. and these can be used to treat different conditions. One very common one that I can tell you, using diphenhydramine, that's Benadryl, as a sleep medicine, like people that take Benadryl to sleep, that's off-label drug use. There's nothing inherently wrong about off-label drug use. It just means that scientists and doctors later found out that a drug can do different things. This is a great chart of like a ton of common prescription medicines, and these are all like off-label drug uses of that medicine. So yeah, very, very common for drugs to have off-label uses, because the FDA doesn't go through the process of approving a drug twice. They don't need to approve a drug twice when it's already allowed to be prescribed in the US. Nothing to be fear-mongering about.
They can cause severe cardiac problems in infants.
That is completely false. So, okay, he's doing the classic fear-mongering about domperidone. Okay, this is the lactation journal of like the National Library of Medicine about medicines, drugs, and whether or not they transmit into breast milk. What we found is that there have been no adverse effects found in the limited number of published cases of breastfed infants whose mothers were taking domperidone. There's not a risk to infants. There have been no adverse events noted. Now, when he's talking about heart problems with domperidone, is that there is a very particular portion of the population which is at risk of heart problems, and domperidone seems to increase that risk. That particular portion of the population is elderly women. There were 2 studies with mean ages of 72.5 years and 79.4 years, which found that domperidone was linked to an increase in adverse heart events. This is not noted in young, healthy mothers, and it's not noted in infants who are breastfed with domperidone. Trying to claim that domperidone is linked to heart issues, it only happened in literally elderly women. And also, these were women that were taking it intravenously, like they were shooting up domperidone, not like taking the pills. Trying to claim that because elderly women suffered heart problems, therefore, this drug would be transferred into the breast milk of a healthy mother and it would cause heart problems in kids. That doesn't track, because it doesn't do that. There were no adverse effects noted in the children. In all of the medical literature we have, no adverse effects. So that's just a lie.
There's another thing we find on with the trans activists and with gender ideology regularly. Lots of different drugs are being used off-label in ways that they are not intended to be used.
That is not what off-label means. Off-label does not mean it's not intended to be used in that way. What it means is that we discovered another use for it. That'd be like saying that you are not intended to use Benadryl as a sleep aid. No. Benadryl is often given as a sleep aid. It's often intended for that purpose because we found that it can do more than just block allergy symptoms. And yeah, puberty blockers for trans kids was also an off-label use because we found that, oh, in addition to treating precocious puberty, puberty blockers can help with kids who have gender dysphoria. So, oh hey, here we go. New effect of the medicine. Let's prescribe it to this new population that it seems to be working very well for, because that's how research works. That's how medicine works. That's how science works. If it's working well for a certain population with a certain condition, they should be able to access that treatment.
Like the chemical castration drugs given to children. These are off-label drugs that are being used in ways...
It's also not chemical castration. You can become fertile again, even if you take puberty blockers.
Is that they're not supposed to be used.
And off-label does not mean not supposed to be used. That is not what that means. He is lying there.
And that's why with this drug, neither the US nor Canada allow domperidone to be used for inducing lactation.
That's also not true. So in the US, domperidone is not prescribed because of the problems that elderly women had with it. But in Canada, domperidone is prescribed. And you can get domperidone off-label in Canada for breastfeeding. And there are doctors who prescribe it off-label in Canada for breastfeeding. He is just lying there.
CBC explained the risks in a report. Watch.
Effie Liusa says without 120 milligrams a day of domperidone, she might not be able to breastfeed her daughter.
She's gaining weight properly at the right rate. And I have to say, I'm pretty thankful for domperidone.
But Health Canada has issued a warning about the medication, saying it's linked to higher risk for abnormal heart rhythms, even sudden death, if a person takes more than 30 milligrams a day or is older than 60.
See that? They mention it's in the elderly population. Like, they're mentioning it's for the very high doses in the elderly population who is at risk, not the babies, not the mothers.
Domperidone isn't approved in the United States, and the FDA has specifically warned mothers not to take it. In Canada, the drug is an approved treatment for stomach problems. Health Canada warns patients should stop taking it and get medical attention right away, only if they have symptoms such as heart palpitations, dizziness, fainting, or seizures. The warning doesn't specifically mention breastfeeding mothers because Health Canada hasn't approved domperidone for that use.
Look at that. The warning doesn't even apply to breastfeeding mothers. The thing that he's citing is literally disproving him. It points out that it's not a problem for infants, that it's a concern for people who are elderly women taking very high doses, and it mentions that there is no warning, like for infants. Like it literally disproves him. How can they play their own how can they play a source that disproves them with like the tiniest bit of critical thinking and get away with it?
So what we learned from that is that this Mount Sinai case study about how great it is to induce lactation in men is actually promoting the use of a drug that endangers infants.
No, it does not endanger infants. No adverse effects have been found in a limited number of published cases of breastfed infants whose mothers were taking domperidone. Literally, no adverse effects.
By the way, it's not just Mount Sinai that's endorsing the use of domperidone, even if it kills newborns. Another case study
It doesn't kill newborns. It doesn't.
These activists cite, which came out just a few weeks ago actually, involves the same drug. It's a UCLA study called Lactation Induction in a Transgender Woman. Study size, again, it's a sample size of 1, and it doesn't reach any definitive conclusion.
Wait, lactation induction in a transgender woman? Was that? He said it came out a few weeks ago. This one's from January of 2021. That's not a couple weeks ago. The most recent one was the one that analyzed the breast milk. Oh, okay, this one is the one that he's claiming was like a couple weeks ago. So interesting that he intentionally chooses not to read the subtitle. It's Lactation Induction in a Transgender Woman, Macronutrient Analysis and Patient Perspectives. He can't mention this because this article is the one that analyzed the nutritional contents of the trans woman's breast milk and found that it was at reference levels or better in every category. Findings provide reassurance about the adequacy of nutrition from human milk produced by non-gestational transgender female and non-binary patients on estrogen-based gender-affirming hormone therapy. The article disproves his claim about, like, it's not safe and that they didn't analyze the contents. So that's why he can't even say the subtitle of the article. He's so slippery.
Conclusions. In fact, it calls for future analysis into 24-hour milk samples in order to provide a, quote, detailed assessment of macronutrients.
That's the study that did analyze macronutrients.
But this case study also involves administering domperidone, which again isn't allowed in this country because of
It's not that domperidone is not allowed. It would just be off-label.
how dangerous it is to infants.
It's not dangerous to infants. That's a lie. It's a danger to elderly women. Matt, get it right.
So let's get back to the Mount Sinai case study because it gets even worse.
Oh my goodness, he can't even finish talking about that one. He can't mention anything else about the recent report because it analyzed the nutritional content of the breast milk. He's so slippery because he knows that he's wrong.
The study makes it clear that the man in the case study isn't just on domperidone, he's also on anti-anxiety drugs, which can cause serious problems for infants during breastfeeding. But the study never mentions if the man stopped.
It really depends on what anti-anxiety drug you're talking about. And also, the trans woman was working with a doctor. Therefore, the doctor would have raised concerns if that were going to be a problematic anti-anxiety drug. And the doctor would have told them that they would have needed to get off of it if it was a problem. The doctors are doing that in these case studies. Like, they're monitoring the medicines that the patient's on to be able to say whether or not they need to get off of a certain medicine for breastfeeding. Like they do this. Like, Matt's just fear-mongering about something that didn't happen.
Stop those meds before supposedly breastfeeding.
By the way, the general advice, if you are breastfeeding, is keep taking all of your medicine and then talk to your doctor about if there's any medicines that you need to get off of while breastfeeding. And only if your doctor tells you to get off of a medicine, stop taking the medicine and then start breastfeeding your child. Like, that's the recommended medical route, is keep taking your medicine. You can start inducing lactation, talk to your doctor if there's any concerns, and then afterwards only get off of things that, like, your doctor tells you you need to, because it's pretty important to keep taking your meds. And if it's something's not concerning, don't go off of your meds. Like there's lots of medicines that don't even transmit through the breast milk. And so you don't need to go off of those. Don't do that.
Instead, the case study says that this man managed to produce 8 ounces of milk daily and was, quote, the sole source of nourishment for her child for 6 weeks. Well, as Dr. Sanger explained, it's clear that that's not enough breast milk. A 5-pound baby needs at least 4 more ounces than that.
Yeah, that's why the trans woman in the case study started supplementing with formula as soon as she did not have enough supply. Like that's why she did that. Also, she likely had like milk that she was able to store before the baby's delivery because she was inducing lactation before the baby's delivery, and so that would have allowed her to keep the baby sustained for the first 6 weeks. But afterwards, she did supplement with formula because her and her doctor also had that concern, and they dealt with it.
So how did this work? Study never says.
The study says that she supplemented with formula. That's what the study said.
They never observed the man breastfeeding or studied the results in any way.
What? You don't need to observe someone lactating on the spot to know that they're lactating. Like you can rely on what they report. That's how these studies work. But I mean, if you need to show it in action, like here, this is me lactating. There you go. Proof that it can happen. Enjoy.
As Sanger writes, quote, "This raises serious concerns about the authenticity of the entire report." In other words, it could all just be made up.
I'm sorry. Wait. He's suggesting that the entire case study is made up because they didn't watch the breastfeeding happen? That's ridiculous. So much of case studies relies on reports from doctors and patients. This case study also had reports from the child's pediatrician. They had reports from the child's doctors. There are so many doctor reports this is based on. To suggest that the entire case study is fake is crazy. Like, that's unhinged crazy.
Well, let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that the baby got enough of whatever this substance coming out of this guy's chest really is.
It's breast milk. And yes, the baby did. The baby was developmentally appropriate and healthy throughout the entire case report, which was what was observed.
That still doesn't make the artificially induced fake breast milk into the same thing as a woman's breast milk. As Sanger noted, quote, "Mother's breast milk in the context of pregnancy isn't the same as drug-induced milk production in a man, nor is the breast milk static in composition."
The case report did not analyze the nutritional contents of the breast milk. They just analyzed the health of the child, which was healthy and appropriate. The other study, which Matt intentionally ignored, other than mentioning the crop title, did perform a nutrient analysis. They did analyze the contents of the milk, and it was found to be identical to that of cis women. There was also the study on the breast milk of a cis man, and it was found to have lactose, proteins, and electrolytes within the normal range of lactating women. Other studies did actually do that analysis.
Mother's breast milk begins, it's loaded with vitamins and fat, then it transitions days later into a vitamin-rich composition. Did that happen?
Wait. Okay, he's talking about the transition from colostrum to milk, but he's wrong. He said that the colostrum, the first part, was rich in fat. That's not true. Actually, colostrum has less fat. It's often more clear or kind of like lemony looking, like lemon juice looking kind of substance that comes out at first. It has more vitamins, but less sugar and fat. Like he's literally just wrong about breast milk. He doesn't know the difference between breast milk and colostrum. He's like actually just wrong about that. Did they get colostrum first and then it transitioned to breast milk? I had that experience. Actually, the first couple of days that I was inducing lactation, it was essentially clear or kind of like lemon colored. And by lemon colored, I mean like the color of like lemon juice, like that kind of cloudy, like yellow tint. Like that's what my breast milk was for the first couple of days, because that's how inducing lactation it starts. You start producing colostrum and then you start producing milk afterwards. That's what happened with me. I actually have the personal experience of that happening.
The authors of this case study didn't measure any of that, which is a pretty big oversight, because normally when males start
But the other case study did. The other case study did analyze the nutrients.
discharging liquid from their chests, which is something that has been known to happen, it's a sign of a significant medical problem. It's not something you'd want to drink. Starvation, for
So spontaneous lactation can be the result of a medical problem, but this wasn't spontaneous lactation. This was intentionally induced lactation following a safe and well-known medical protocol. So that's a completely different case.
example, can cause spontaneous lactation. That was observed in the concentration camps in World War II. So maybe at this point you're saying, well, I trust the researchers from Mount Sinai. It's a reputable institution. Or maybe you're wondering, how is it possible that a study from researchers at Mount Sinai could be this terrible? Well, as always with this kind of thing, you can't rely on the source anymore. Peer-reviewed doesn't mean anything.
Peer-reviewed does not mean anything. Matt Walsh. The side of facts and logic says peer review does not mean anything. That is yikesy. To be clear, peer review is not a perfect process. It has never claimed to be a perfect process, but rather, peer review gives us a chance to double check things, gives us a chance to make sure that the scientific community at large is involved in ongoing research. And when we have peer review and we can collect the broad spectrum of research on a topic and find the overwhelming, abundantly clear trend within that topic, yeah, that starts to be very convincing. All available research we have on lactation in trans women shows that it is as nutrient dense as cis women's breast milk, that it's safe, that it's healthy. The children that are breastfed from trans women's breast milk turn out developmentally appropriate and healthy. That's all available evidence we have. We have this imperfect but very good process. And when we find the same result again and again and again in different circumstances with different limitations, that's very convincing. That's the value of peer review.
Given the state of medicine. So I did check. What does that mean? One of the authors of this case study is a trans activist and former sex worker named Zill Goldstein.
Okay. Does that take away from their reputation at all? Like, you can be trans, you can be a former sex worker, and you can also be a researcher. Those don't detract from your ability to do research in any way.
He's very active on Twitter, where he's actually come out and explicitly said that non-trans people...
Yes, you're very active on Twitter, Matt. You're very anti-trans. You're very anti-sex work. Therefore, your interpretation of this article is going to be biased. Like what? What is this claim?
People shouldn't be working on research about trans people. So Zill Goldstein, if you haven't guessed, is himself a man pretending to be a woman, which means that here we have a trans activist exiling actual scientists from the medical field.
I don't think that's happening. Like, cis people are allowed to do science and publish science about trans people. I'm guessing that Matt is, like, misquoting Zill here, but if the quote is that, like, research on trans people should be led by trans people, that what this person is trying to say is that, like, not including transgender perspectives and not being informed by the actual lived experience of trans people can allow for glaring gaps within research, and that it's good to address those glaring gaps. Like, I'm guessing that's what this person is actually meaning, but obviously Matt's not pulling up, like, a source or a tweet to show that, because he's being disingenuous about what was actually said.
And passing off his propaganda as real medical research. But all the findings are just...
It is real medical research. It's peer reviewed.
Just anecdotes that aren't supported by actual research. That's why in the...
It's a case study. The point is that's supposed to be one individual case. But we have other research beyond just a single case study. That's the point.
5 years since the Mount Sinai case study of one person, all these activists can produce is yet another case study of another one person using the same banned drug at UCLA.
No. We have more than just one other case study. There was this survey of healthcare professionals' experiences in inducing lactation in trans women, covering at least 13 direct cases and at least 17 providers with additional knowledge of programs for inducing lactation in trans women. That's at least 30 cases right there. So no, we can produce more than that, and we can produce analysis of the breast milk. Like, there's more research than just 2 case studies. He's literally lying.
But in medicine, as in media, everyone's too cowed, literally it turns out, to stand up to this nonsense. The lactation...
But how is it nonsense? Like how is it dangerous?
Network, which connects families with lactation consultants, has this on their website. Quote, "Can I breastfeed if I was assigned male at birth? Yes, you can. You don't have to have ovaries or a uterus to breastfeed." Now, there's no data...
Yes, because that is a factually true statement.
...to support that, as we've established.
What do you mean there's no data to support that? Matt Walsh admitted that there being 2 case studies. There's also this survey of healthcare professionals' experiences covering at least 30 cases. Yes, there is a data. All available data shows that, yes, trans women can breastfeed. Even available data shows that cis men can breastfeed.
But they say it anyway.
Because it's factually true. That's why they say it.
Salon agrees, quote, "Individuals with biologically male breasts actually do have the ability to lactate."
Because that's true. Even cis men can lactate. Cis men often can't lactate as much as somebody who has fully developed breasts, but cis men can lactate. That is a factually true statement, as we saw at the beginning. That's why human beings are mammals, because we have mammary glands. That's actual basic biology. Humans are mammals. We have mammary glands. It's a leftover artifact from the fact that human development starts out basically sex neutral, And then it's through hormone washes that we differentiate into male versus female sex characteristics because we're mammals. It's actual basic biology that they don't know.
Which pairs parents with surrogates has this on its website, quote, "Men can breastfeed too." They're very excited about it.
Yes, because it's factually true.
So this whole saga, as weird as it is, reveals a lot about trans ideology. Mainly that it's...
Also, the cis men breastfeeding has nothing to do with, like, trans ideology, if you want to call it that. Because that's just talking about cis men breastfeeding. And yes, that is also factually true.
Intensely narcissistic.
Intensely narcissistic? How? I'm doing this for my child. Like, breastfeeding is not easy. Like, having to pump multiple times a day, eventually getting to a point where you have to pump, like, every 2 hours or so. Like, that's a lot of work. No narcissist would go through, like, that much amount of work in order to, like, feed a child. Like, if I was being narcissistic, why would I go to a doctor? Why would I do everything I can to ensure the health and safety of my child? Like, that just doesn't, that claim doesn't make any sense when I'm working with my doctor, when I am going through all of this effort and weird changes to my body, weird hormonal changes to be able to do this for my kids. Saying that breastfeeding is narcissistic is crazy. Like, breastfeeding is a lot of work.
And it is primarily interested in normalizing bizarre, harmful, fetishistic behavior.
So breastfeeding is pretty normal. I think it should be normalized. Breastfeeding in even like cis men, depending on what culture you go to, it's actually not that bizarre. Like the Aka tribe, as we saw, not a bizarre behavior over there. So I don't know if you can legitimately claim that it's bizarre on like an objective basis. Harmful, there was no evidence he presented that this is actually harmful to infants. He couldn't present any evidence that this is harmful to infants. All he could do was lie about the warning against domperidone in elderly women. So that's not a harm against infants. That's just a lie. And then fetishistic, there's nothing sexual about breastfeeding a child. Like, that's pretty fucking crystal clear to me. And to suggest otherwise makes you the creep, Matt. I mean, here's the thing. Matt talks so much about the left being, like, fetishistic and creepy, and he sells this baby diaper Matt Walsh plushie on his website. Now, if I'm going to be very charitable, I would say that this is just weird. But if I was going to be as uncharitable as Matt, then I would say that this is pedophilic propaganda, that he advertises for kids to play with. Kids play with baby diaper Matt Walsh. That this is fetishistic, daddy dom, little boy, kink fetish content, and that he needs to be thrown in jail for this pedophilia. Which is what Matt Walsh is doing to me. Like, that's literally all his argument boils down to. And you can throw it right back at him for something that, if we're going to be charitable, is just a little bit weird. Whatever.
You know, they're constantly telling you to accept these medically induced marvels without any scientific basis. Do we actually know
that there is a scientific basis? I've covered some of the research here.
if a baby can be sustained healthily on the, quote, milk from a male?
Yes. All available evidence shows that the answer is yes.
No.
Yeah, all available evidence says yes.
What are the long-term effects of ingesting synthetic hormone-laced nipple discharge?
We haven't observed any adverse effects in the long term. Also, like, all the medicine that trans women take, there have been cis women that have taken those exact same medicines, and in the long term, we do not observe adverse effects in infants that are breastfed on breast milk from women who are taking those medicines. So all available evidence, even all available long-term evidence, shows that there's no concern here.
This sums up the entire medical and scientific strategy behind the trans agenda.
This sums up the entire medical and scientific strategy behind the Matt Walsh agenda. Just lie about the research.
We don't know exactly how harmful any of this is. We can assume that it's harmful.
Wait, he says we don't know how harmful it is, therefore we can just assume that it's harmful? What? I'm sorry, what? First off, we know that it's not harmful. I could just be like, you know, we don't know about the long-term effects of Matt Walsh as a human existing. We can assume it's harmful, therefore Matt Walsh shouldn't exist. That's literally as logically valid as the claim that he just... Actually, like, yeah, literally, that's his argument. We can just assume it's bad. If I assume that my conclusion is true, then it is true. I'm sorry. If somebody said, well, we can assume that the Earth is flat, therefore the Earth is flat, you would call them fucking delusional. Like, this is literally a delusional tier argument.
We don't even know, though, how harmful it is. We don't know what will happen in the
All available evidence shows that it's safe.
long term. We don't know what effect this will have on the children unwillingly involved in it.
The children unwillingly involved in it? Well, all children are unwillingly involved in breastfeeding. I'm sorry, are you going to ask a baby, hey, do you want to be breastfed? No, they're hungry. Like, they're just going to consume what you put in front of them. Like, that's how babies work. Also, like, if you want long-term data on this, we have to do research. Like, he's trying to say that, like, because a kid can't consent, like, we can never do this, but at the same time, we can't do this unless we have long-term research. By that logic, we could never do this, because he's not allowing us to even collect the research. Like, he's saying that we can just assume it's harmful in a research case study, therefore don't do it, but you need to have long-term research, which you're not allowed to collect. Like, that's literally his argument. It's so self-defeating.
But do it anyway. Do it because it will make the trans-identified person feel good.
No. Do it because all available evidence shows that it's safe, healthy, effective, has the same profound benefits of breast milk, and because we want to collect more research so that we can have the research which you're demanding we need.
Trans ideology, as I have argued for years, is narcissism made into a religion.
Okay, but can we be real for a second? Transphobia is narcissism made into a religion. The idea of I'm uncomfortable with a trans person existing, or I'm uncomfortable with somebody wanting to express themselves a certain way, somebody wanting to be prescribed a certain medication that their doctor determines they would benefit from. I'm uncomfortable with that, therefore you should not be allowed to do that. That is narcissism. That's saying that my freedom, not even my freedom, just my comfort or my bigotry is more important than your American freedom as a trans person to express yourself, your freedom to have a doctor-patient relationship where the doctor can prescribe you medicine which they deem is beneficial for you. If my freedom is overridden by your bigotry and tummy ache, that is narcissism made into a religion.
When a real mother breastfeeds her child, it is a loving, life-sustaining act.
I can tell you from personal experience, that's exactly what it is when I breastfeed my child. That's exactly what I'm doing it for.
Trans activists take that, something that is good and life-giving, and they fetishize it and bastardize it.
I'm sorry, how have I fetishized lactation? He still never made the connection. All he did is that he showed that I wear cow crop top and PJs. That's not fetishizing lactation.
And turn the focus back to themselves as always. A mother breastfeeds her child for the sake of the child.
Yes, that's why I'm doing this, and that's why I'm working with a doctor. If this wasn't for the sake of a child, then I wouldn't work with a doctor.
The man, quote, breastfeeds the child for his own sake, for his own ego.
That's fucking crazy. If you were just doing this for yourself, you wouldn't even need to feed a kid. Like, if you had some kind of, like, lactation kink that you were trying to fulfill, like, you could just induce lactation, not work with a doctor, and not feed it to a kid. Like, it's literally that simple. But the fact that I'm not doing that goes to show that this is not a self-centered fetish, that this is me wanting to provide for my child. Like, it's a lot of work.
His own weird desires and proclivities. The well-being of the child is irrelevant.
Okay, that's fucking ridiculous. The fact that I'm working with a doctor and that I am diving into the peer-reviewed literature myself to do the best I can shows that the health of my child is what's most important in all of this. I want to do things as good as I can for my child. Breast milk is better than formula, and I want my child to have that. I'm doing this for my child, and that's why there's doctors involved.
Trans activists, they don't care about the well-being of anyone but themselves, though they do a really poor job even of taking care of their own well-being.
I'd say that I'm taking care of my own well-being pretty well. Although the thing that would make it harder to take care of my well-being would be the constant death threats, harassment, and attacks against me from right-wingers, which I've been receiving. That certainly makes it harder to like take care of my own mental health.
They don't care who they hurt.
I'm sorry, what? Don't care who I hurt? He's literally describing the attacks against me. I care a lot. I'm a real family woman, and I would breastfeed to nourish my child. And I don't think that Matt Walsh is family man enough to do it. I really just don't think he's a real family man. He can't do it.
They make all kinds of baseless claims about how all these things are safe.
It's not baseless. It's based on all available research and data we have on the subject.
But the truth is that they don't care if it's safe or not, and they don't know.
No, I do care if it's safe. Based on all available evidence, it is safe. Hope that clears up the confusion, Matt.
All they care about is being affirmed all the time, no matter the cost.
No. If that were the case, then I wouldn't need to work with a doctor. But I am working with a doctor, so that doesn't even make sense.
And the thing about affirmation is that it requires other people Gender ideology is not just a personal matter. A man
Affirmation does not require other people. Like, you can affirm yourself. So no, that doesn't track.
who tries to live as a woman is not making a mere personal decision. As Naomi and his fake
Wait, a trans person existing is not making a personal decision. That's like literally the people that are like, if gay people can get married, then that violates my personal freedom to get married. Like, what? Like, if two gay people get married, that does not infringe upon your freedom in any way. A trans person existing does not infringe upon your freedom in any way. Unless by freedom you mean the freedom to limit the behavior of others, at which point that's not freedom at all. It's what's the meme that's like, isn't there somebody you forgot to ask? Yes. Matt's literally doing this thing. The myth of consensual sex. I consent. I consent. Matt Walsh says, I don't. Isn't there somebody you forgot to ask? Checkmate. That's literally what he's doing. Like, he's unironically doing that.
studies demonstrate innocent people are being conscripted to affirm and validate it. And it's not a coincidence that so often those innocent people are children.
Okay, so wait, he called all my studies fake, which is crazy to suggest that all of these peer-reviewed studies are fake. Great, to suggest that the National Library of Medicine's book on drugs and lactation database is all fake. That's crazy. That's absolutely insane. He had nothing. He literally had no substantive claims. Absolutely insane. What program am I using for meme making? This is MS Paint. Because I'm edgy like that. And then perfect. Let's go ahead and get the background color. Ooh. We need give me a good medical doctor. Does that guy look like a friendly medical doctor? Oh, that guy looks friendly, but I would have to do cropping. Oh yeah, she can give me the informed consent. Oh wait, no, that's even better. Wait, that's it. Oh, that's the one right there. She looks like she can give informed consent. See, this is why I hire an editor to do things. Oh, I got the little text box a little bad. I swear, if my editor watches me do this, they're going to freak at how horrible my technique is for for making a meme in MS Paint. Oh, that's good. That's good. Where is it? Oh, sad face Matt. Sad. Can we get a sad Matt Walsh face? Do you want to make Matt Walsh just like a brick of gray? That's the meme right there. Okay, we need a good caption. Just reviewed Matt Walsh's segment, the mommy Naomi milking discourse, and tweet. Fantastic.